Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 161 of Rush Roundtable. We are talking the final two tracks on Hold Your Fire. They are Tai Shan and High Water. We are doing a little bit something different here where we're combining two songs together just to kind of see how it goes. You know, they're probably two of the, unfortunately, least popular tracks on this record, and we are going to do our best to do them justice, and then hopefully maybe you'll get into them by the end of this roundtable. So before we dive into the song, we have a very first-time guest here, Evan, in the bottom left corner for me. Welcome to Rush Roundtable. Happy to have you. Taking on the tall task of talking about Tai Shan and High Water for Evan's first roundtable. So should be a fun one. So yeah, of course, we're going to start with the 9th track on Hold Your Fire. That is Tai Shan, a song that kind of became, I guess, a laughing stock in the Rush community, or people say it's their least favorite track, or Getty and Alex said they don't like it, or whatever, right? We're going to break it down. We're going to tell you why it's awesome. And we're going to start with the intro music. So I'm going to let my friend Alex take it away.
Well, obviously we can all hear straight out that they're using a keyboard patch that's meant to mimic kind of Asian flutes, which to some extent might be a little dated now, but at the same time too, just highlighting that B major scale, a little bit of an overdub. Lifeson gets into an arpeggio that's kind of classic Lifeson arpeggio, where he's kind of ascending a string, staying with B major, working some open strings in the classic Lifeson fashion.
Yeah, I think it's very tastefully done.
Yeah.
You look back at like Bangkok, right? We think of Bangkok,
Yeah.
and we think it's probably acceptable at the time. Now, if that was done now, it probably would be acceptable. This, I think, is done very tastefully, and it really sets the tone, really sets the atmosphere, and it puts you there. It puts you there in Neil's shoes. The way they perform this. So
that's something that I was thinking of with this. Certainly, that part in Passage to Bangkok would be cartoony now.
Right.
Whereas this is really, you could hear the reverence that Neil had for his situation. It wasn't arbitrary. It wasn't, oh, I'm going to culturally appropriate. It was basically Neil saying, I had this really powerful experience. I'd like to put it out there in this manner. And honestly, he did. They did.
Very well said. Anybody else want to talk about the opening music or any opening thoughts before we dive into the lyrics? All right, so the lyrics open with high on the sacred mountain, up the 7,000 stairs, in the golden light of autumn, there was magic in the air. Clouds surrounded the summit, the wind blew strong and cold. Among the silent temples, and the writing carved in gold. Somewhere in my instincts, the primitive took hold.
You're saying it, as you're saying it, I'm singing it to myself. I can't listen to words like that. It's a Zen. It's a magic. It's everybody makes fun of going up 7,000 stairs, and this was very special to Neil. And I don't know why nobody feels it, but I could see where he's coming from. This was his piece. This was where he got his ideas. This was where he's describing in detail. Clouds surrounded the summit. The wind blew strong and cold. This was his. He loved this part of his thing, and I think it's very Zen-like, and I can associate with that. Oh, and my cat's walking.
The kitty agrees.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, like, the word I take out of this whole section here is instincts, right? I mean, this whole record is centered around the theme of instinct, and when you're, I think Neil being at the top of this mountain, I think it's instinctive to just stand there and take it all in. And um,
He embraced it.
he
It worked
exactly
very
embraced it.
well.
It's something that's probably stuck with him. I mean, I've never been to Mount Tai Shan, but I know people that have actually, or Jared being one of them, our pal Jared. Um, but I've been at tops of mountains. I've been in similar, I guess, not a similar magnitude, but similar situations, and that's what you do. It's instinctive to stand there and
Even
take it all in.
metaphorically, it doesn't even have to be a mountain. It's the idea that there's a place that he went, that he had these feelings, and he was at peace, and it spoke to him. It doesn't have to be a mountain. It could be, anywhere in your house. It could be a separate room.
That's a
This
really
is
good point. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really good point.
he talked, a lot of songs he did were about thoughts and feelings and imagining you were somewhere at some time. A lot of Power Windows was like that, like Middletown Dreams. You don't have to go anywhere to have a feeling. It's a time, it's a place, it's a part of your aura, and you stop and you take it all in. And that's what a lot of Neil was about.
Yeah, that's very well put. So the chorus goes, I stood at the top of the mountain, and China sang to me in the peaceful haze of harvest time, a song of eternity. Evan, your thoughts?
Well, before I get into the chorus, I do just want to quickly add that I think Tai Shan is it's a great example of just the gift that Neil had for painting a picture using just words. Like if you go back to that first verse with the the writings carved in gold and the golden light of autumn, I can just perfectly picture where he's at on the top of that mountain and just like the feelings that he has as he's staring off into distance. But so I stood at the top of the mountain and China sang to me. I don't know, it's just well, first of all, not even just talking about the lyrics, the synth part that kicks in when the chorus starts, it just like, at least for me when I listen, it just transports me to the top of Mount Tai Shan, and I can
1,000%.
perfectly just picture
1,000%.
what Neil was feeling and what he was seeing. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I lyrically, Tai Shan is not a very dense song. I don't think there's a whole lot to really pick apart. What you see is very much it, but I don't think that makes this song any less interesting, really. I just, I don't know. I think this is a great song.
Yeah, I think it's one that you kind of have to, take it for what it is. You can't really take this song and compare it to other Rush songs.
No, you read between the lines. You
Absolutely.
Right.
go where Neil went, and you can understand what he's talking about.
Right. I think if you took this song and you presented it to a friend and you labeled it as, here, listen to this song, instead of, here, listen to this Rush song, I think they would enjoy it. And it's I get it. I mean, it's not, this isn't freaking hemispheres, right? You know what I mean? It's completely different era. It's 10 years later. And it's much different, but I think you have to take it for what it is, and the fact that it's a memory and a moment for Neil. And I think it's awesome that Alex and Getty let it happen and put music to it. But I think regardless of what Alex and Getty think of it or thought of it, or their whole perspective of it, put yourself in Neil's shoes and listen to the song. Put headphones on, really good headphones on, and that's when the song will really.
I think it's a beautiful song. I really, really think it's a beautiful song. Rush or not Rush, it's a beautiful song.
True, yeah.
And all of Rush is between the lines. We're talking about it. 40 years I'm a fan. Every Rush song is between the lines, because we're talking about it from then till now. And everybody's still coming up with ideas and what it means and what it doesn't mean. So everything Rush does is between the lines.
Yep. All right, continuing. If you raise your hands to heaven, you will live 100 years. I stood there like a mystic, lost in the atmosphere. I'm kind of singing it too. Like it's, it's hard.
Read it.
It's hard not to. Um, the clouds were suddenly parted. For a moment, I could see the patterns of the landscape reaching to the eastern sea. I looked upon a presence spanning 40 centuries. Alex?
Well, certainly, that's anyone who's probably been willing to look into Taishan, the site, the monument, you know the actual place would see that there is that legend of raising your hands and living for the 100 years. So, needless to say, Neil had to include that, and certainly as we're talking about the idea that his descriptive powers of putting us there so we can be in that position where we're seeing it like a film right in front of us. And then you think of the idea of seeing that far, seeing the ocean, the sea, and the whole aspect of spanning 40 centuries. He's making sure to remind us that China as a civilization has been really enduring. I mean, through all the good and bad periods of its existence, it's got this powerful, legendary vibe to it. I guess is the way I would say it. And certainly the idea that he was on his bicycling trip and said, "All right, I'm going to check this place out."
Yeah, no, I was just going to add. So back to Vivian's point from earlier about finding your zen, finding your place of peace. To kind of take this line metaphorically as well. If you raise your hands to heaven, you will live 100 years. I almost feel like you can kind of look at that in a way of if you find your place of peace, it will add years to your life because you will be less stressed out and you have that place to escape the world where the Dark Lord cannot go type thing, right? So to steal from another unpopular Rush song, but yeah,
Right.
I think I think that no, I mean I really do think that it, it I don't think Neil really intended this to be that metaphorically, but I think with any of his lyrics, I think you definitely can, and I think I never even thought of this song like that, and now it's opening my eyes to different avenues that this song could take, really. So, all right, so then Getty sings a chorus again, and we're going to leave this the last part here open to discussion. I thought of time and distance, the hardships of history. I heard the hope and the hunger when China sang to me, and then it goes into the outro and into the fade out. So, group, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
That kind of speaks to what you were just addressing, based on what Vivian said and what you were, as they say, what you were just saying. Much like living 100 years, well, 100 years is variable. It's just in many ways, it's just an arbitrary number.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously Neil didn't even live 70 years, but he lived more than so many of us. He lived enough of a lifespan that most of us can just be really envious and just and that kind of works its way into the final verse as far as time and distance and the hope and the hunger, and certainly the hardships of history. Just the idea of time and distance, much like the 100 years. Well, that is time, but there's that relative nature of and much like Vivian would say, reaching back to Middletown Dreams, just the distance of where are you? What are you doing? Are you there? If you're there, you have a good beginning. So you don't have to travel to China. You can be there.
In Middletown Dreams. You don't have to go out of your attic. You transport yourself and you're on top of a mountain.
Yep. I always heard this. I always thought he's Getty saying horror, not hunger. By the way, I didn't realize that till just now. Yeah, no, I think I agree. Yeah, I think the hardships of history, right? That you can take that into your everyday life. The hardships that we all deal with. And China singing to him is finding that place of peace. That we were discussing. So, yeah. closing thoughts for the group about Tai Shan?
Go listen to it. Period.
Yeah, absolutely. Go listen to it. Go listen to it. But I think Tai Shan is a very relatable song. If you've ever had if you've ever just been like awestruck by nature or had some kind of ethereal experience, I feel like you can appreciate this song on another level.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just being, it's a very fall, a very autumn song for me.
Yeah.
You know, in the peaceful haze of harvest time, you know, it's a very autumn type song for me. But
it kind of moves into High Water. We're
Mhm.
going High Water in the same thought.
Yeah.
yep, what a transition. Do you want to host High Water, Viv?
No thanks.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point, and we're gonna talk about High Water next. So I say let's do it. High Water, of course, is the 10th track on this record. It is one that I've often said gets forgotten about / overshadowed because of its positioning after Tai Shan.
Yeah.
Because it's something where if you're not
People stop. Yeah, people
fan of
stop
Tai
right
Shan, you
before
stop.
Tai Shan. They say that's
Yep.
the end of the album. Yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
Which is very unfortunate because I think this is the most overlooked song in the whole catalog because of that reason. I mean, I think I obviously think there's songs that aren't as good, but I think this is the most overlooked song. I
Mhm.
shouldn't say aren't as good. I think all Rush songs are good, but I think, you know, objectively, right? But yeah, High Water, the last song on the record, and it is one that I think it's purposefully placed as the last song on the record because, again, you go back to instinct, the theme of this record, instinct, and we as human beings, other than oxygen, you know, water is like the biggest thing we need to survive, and it's instinctively all around us, and we are made of water, and yeah, and we lost Evan, but that's all right. We will continue on. Yeah, he went to get water. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a song that you know, if you haven't oh, you good? All right, I think we're good. Yeah, High Water is definitely a track that
I think I better be.
A little bit of a delay.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah, a little bit of a delay. We'll keep it all in. We'll keep it all in the episode. This is what happens on Rush Roundtable. So, yeah, High Water is definitely a track that you know, I was saying is often overlooked. But let's talk about it. Let's tell people why it's good, and let's tell people why they should go and revisit it. So, you know, it opens with a drum pattern, you know, from Neil, and of course, you know, a guitar part here, and we're gonna, of course, let Alex talk about the intro.
Well, you know, the thing I think is interesting in listening to the drum pattern, I almost feel like that's maybe a variation he came up with on Mystic Rhythms, which obviously was the album ender on the previous album.
Sure.
That's a nice analogy. Yes.
It to me, and that's, you know, and I bought the record 35 years ago, but I was just listening to it, you know, like an hour ago, and it's kind of like, yeah, I feel like that has a Mystic Rhythm state of mind, which made sense, and you know, we could always see where Neil would wind up stringing things along between different albums. Now, one of the things that, I mean, you figure 35 years ago the album sounded like it did. For my part, with some of the other guitar players that I've always listened to, like Andy Summers from the Police, and then you listen to some of the other people, especially some of the jazz or fusion individuals like Pat Metheny or Al Di Meola from that time period around 1990, a lot of their sound, a lot of the production sound had this certain timbre and tonality to it. So that I'll admit I'm not reaching for a lot of those records first. But at the same time, too, I mean, it was just different. It wasn't necessarily bad. And I do feel like both of these songs have that tonality. Like Lifeson's solos, he has a little very short intro solo, and then a solo later, which obviously we'll get to. Even that intro, he's got some harmonics. He's got different arpeggio suspended chords, not too dissimilar to Distant Early Warning progression, but not a copycat. But his solo does have that, and that's coming from, I'd say, some of the digital distortion and or digital processing at the time. It just has this sound to it that sounds very late 80s. And like I say, I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but it's distinctive, and anyone who was very Hemispheres or 2112 at the time might have been thinking, but too bad for them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I forgot all about that guitar solo that Alex plays there, but my God, that if there's ever a a guitar part or a guitar solo that really fits the atmosphere and the vibe of said song, I mean, this is right up there. That part is right up there. It's like it really gets it really brings flowing water to your mind, at least for me, and how wonderfully done,
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Geddy starts singing here with when the waters rose in the darkness in the wake of the endless flood, it flowed into our memory, it flowed into our blood. When something broke the surface just to see the starry dome, we still feel that relation when the water takes us home. In the flying spray of the ocean, the water takes you home. So, Evan, you want to tell us what you think about that?
Yeah, sure. Something I find really interesting about that first part, when the waters rose in the darkness in the wake of the endless flood. When I was kind of putting some notes together for this episode, I read that there's a lot of like civilizations. Most of them have some kind of myth or legend about a great flood happening. And it says it flowed into our memory, it flowed into our blood. To me, this song is about that primitive relationship that we all have with water. And I think that's a pretty neat way to describe it. Sorry. I completely lost my train of thought. I apologize.
I've done that on these.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us, But got it back. This, as we were just talking about with Tai Shan, Neil is pretty, he's infatuated with nature. He, standing at the top of that mountain, whatever. There's a quote that he said about this song where he feels very comfortable around water, whether it be by a pool or a beach or a waterfall or something. And I think this song was just him like expressing the comfort that he finds in nature. And I think that's an interesting thing to write about. That's not something that would, I feel like, pop into most people's minds.
No, not at all.
No, Neil was he was pretty out there. He was an interesting guy.
Yeah, but I mean, to a point you make, there's people that are uncomfortable around water too, that don't like going in swimming pools or don't want to go in the ocean, or for fear of drowning or fear in general of that. And I think I never really thought of that until just now when you're saying that, because it's just he could have taken the song in a completely different direction, than the way he did. But all right, so next part here, Vivian's going to talk to us about, but springing from the weight of the mountains, like the heart of the earth would burst, flowing out from marble fountains in the dreams of a desert thirst. Something swam through the jungles where the mighty rivers roam. Something breaks the silence when the water takes you home. I hear the wordless voices when the water takes me home, when the water takes me home.
Water is very comforting. Water is very relaxing. So when he hears and he feels and he sees, that's his mind. That's comfort to him. It's talking to him, wordless voices. The waves are crashing. Again, to me, it's metaphoric. To me, it's you're sitting back and you're listening to the waves, and they're telling you a story, and they're putting you into a zone, and you're going with it.
Yeah, and I think he's talking about all different sorts of the way water can be, the way you can take in water, right? So, floods. He talks about breaking the surface. So to me, that is like an
Wave.
like the ocean type of deal, and because in the flying spray of the ocean.
A lot of people go to the beach and go to the ocean to sit there and listen to the waves because it calms them down.
Yeah.
And they just, they lose all thought of whatever the hell's going on in the world. And to me, that's.
Well, yeah, I mean, he talks about marble fountains where you can take water and make it pretty, and he talks about in the dreams of a desert thirst when we lack water. He talks about, water in the jungles. Yeah.
All the different forms of water that are necessary for the flow of life, let's say.
Well said. Very well said. Very well said. Now, let's just take a moment to talk about the music here, because I've drawn comparisons myself and heard comparisons to a few songs from the 1970s decade, and those songs being "The Fountain of Lamneth" and "La Villa Strangiato," which is kind of funny here because you've got the Fountain of Lamneth, which, fountain and water, and you've got La Villa Strangiato, which can translate to, the strange house or the strange city. And this song talks about the water taking you home. So there's also comparisons to, and I know Alex wants to talk about it, but I believe, at least I hear like the drum pattern and the bass pattern from La Villa Strangiato, dung 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 dung, in this song. And I also hear Alex calling back to, I think it's Bacchus Plateau. Am I correct, that part of the Fountain of Lamneth?
So
we should have done our research on this. No.
Yeah, we probably.
I believe it's Bacchus Plateau. But yeah, in the Fountain of Lamneth. So you want to say anything about that, Alex?
Well, I mean, it's much like we often will say that. I mean, Neil's obviously not just Neil, but you figure Geddy and Alex are in on that, and I could definitely envision someone like Geddy with the idea of the mad scientist sitting at the controls, thinking, well, not so mad, but the scientist sitting at the controls saying, yeah, let's bring this back to this. The idea of revisiting themes, because much like in the 80s, John Fogerty was sued by his record company, or at least Creedence's record company, for plagiarism of his own songs. And I think that could be sort of a thing where they could be saying, yeah, let's bring the 70s forward. Let's revisit that. And right before we began recording, I mentioned someone from high school asking, posing that question 2 years ago in an email, and I thought, maybe they did do that. It's hard to imagine it was accidental. It really is. We have to assume they probably said, let's bring some themes forward, some rhythms, some chord progressions. Because I mean, chord progressions,
right, kind of things. Yeah, like they like to do every once in a while. Yeah.
And it's like one of John Fogerty's thoughts back when he was sued for plagiarizing himself, is he's saying, this is my style. And I mean, if anyone plays a lot of these songs, they say, oh, Lifeson did that in all of these songs, and it's a person's style. So they're basically just borrowing from themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if anything, it's kind of cool because they're remixing themselves in an era before remixes existed.
And if you're gonna steal from anyone, do it from yourselves, because then there's no
best.
That's true. They wouldn't say that, but yeah, that's true.
The bass is amazing. Geddy's voice is amazing. He's got it's a beautiful, beautiful, soothing voice in this song. Beautifully done.
Yeah, he was definitely at the height of his voice in that time period.
Height with that, yes. Yes.
Yep. And
the bass is just, it rocks throughout the whole thing.
there's nothing like Getty singing Neil's lyrics, right? He just does it
Yeah.
so well and adds such to the vibe that they're trying to
They
accomplish
were
with
so
it. So,
connected. They were just so
Yeah.
connected.
right.
They each other.
That's what makes a real band, a successful band, a band with longevity, is that you got to have everyone on the same page. They have to be one musician in multiple bodies, and that's not easy to find, or you find it, but it doesn't last.
Yeah, but it was more than that. It was more than even the bond of musicians. It was the bond of brothers.
Oh
They
yeah, yeah,
every moment together. So it
Right.
went way beyond.
yeah. The
It,
fact that they wound up not really hating each other the way so many other big bands did,
they kept it at three. They
Yeah.
kept it equal. They kept it even. There was
Yeah.
never a problem. Be honest. I mean, be honest with each other. That's all. And they liked each other. They genuinely liked each other. So
Yeah.
you don't get better in this world. You don't get more top of the line than those three. I'm sorry. You don't. You don't get classier.
No need to apologize. It's very good.
Yeah, we
statement.
all agree.
Why we're
Yeah.
here.
For anybody that might disagree with me,
Like people were watching.
All right. So
nobody was there.
the last set of lyrics, which I think are phenomenal. The way the band comes in musically, and again the way Getty sings these. But waves that crash on the shoreline, torrents of tropical rain, streaming down beyond our memory, streaming down inside our veins. When something left the ocean to crawl high above the foam, we still feel that elation when the water takes us home. In a driving rain of redemption, the water takes me home. The water takes me home. Take me home. And again, back to the way water can flow, tropical rain, you know, above the foam, water can turn into foam in certain instances. And then a driving rain of redemption, rain, another way to for water to be accessed. But I so I want to just touch on the take me home part, or the water takes me home. There's a phrase that's used where some folks will say, go ahead and take us home, or go ahead and take it home, right? Which means wrap it up. Yeah, bring it home. Yeah, wrap it up. Let's close it out. It's it's definitely intentional that this song was last, because guess what? That's what they're doing. It's taking us home. It's taking us to the end of the album, right? It's totally purposeful. We're at the last song of the album, wrapping it up, and the water's taking you home. Now, again, it goes back to the first point I mentioned, at the beginning of talking about this song, where one of the most important things we need as humans is water, and well, water takes us home. That's us. We are water for the most part. And yeah, I think it's purposefully the last lyric in this song, and of course the last song on the record.
Of course, to Evan's point also, as far as every culture having a flood mythos, a lot of cultures developed around, obviously, rivers. Because like you're saying, it was the main mode of travel. Up or down river, paths along rivers and whatnot. And any of us who live in New York, I mean, you had the Erie Canal connecting essentially the Great Lakes to the Hudson River. So, I mean, that was, even just 150, 200 years ago, that was a substantial passage, was that bit of water.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, it's just how impactful water is on us, and how meaningful it is to not only us as humans, but civilization as a whole, right? Society as a whole. Anything anyone else wants to say about high water?
Again, you all take it as water. I take it as metaphorically, the water takes you home to a comfort zone. The water takes you home in your mind.
Sure. Yeah,
I think the band does a really good job of conveying that musically too, especially in this last verse, but like specifically those last few lines. there's just something about the way like the synth and the bass, the way it all comes together. It gives me this
Oh,
feeling
and
of
his
home,
voice, the
really.
last part, oh my God.
Yeah,
Oh my
exactly.
God.
It gives me this feeling of just everything's
There you go.
okay. It makes me smile.
Home. There you go. It takes you home. It's your, that's it. You're there. Yeah.
Yeah. So who's going to tell me to take it home?
One more. It's the end of the album. The album's Hold Your Fire. So you buy the record. My record's in storage, so I'm holding a book that I got back then. Hold Your Fire. It's red. It's fire. By the end of the album, the fire obviously force 10. It's air, the power of air, but the power of people working into the power of people, the fire in us. Tai Shan, we're getting calm, relaxing, looking around. Ending with water, the antithesis of fire to that end.
I like that.
So I just had to say.
Very good thought.
You're holding your fire to the water has overcome you, and you're back on ground.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never actually thought of that before.
Yeah. What puts fire out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to see if there's any interesting liner notes here.
Well, and that's the thing I was thinking while you look those up, is that there's kind of that aspect of the elementals. Tai Shan represents Earth, a higher part of Earth, but also represents air because of the fact that you got, the clouds and the wind is undeniable on a mountain. So we're looking at Earth, we're looking at air, we're looking at water at this point for this song on an album that is talking about fire. So there's just that aspect of the elements in our natural physical world, which of course you had to assume Neil was thinking of that.
Again, another aspect of Neil that nobody thinks about when you're initially listening to this stuff and you're talking about it 40 years later. You're still diving into these lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much depth. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Water can be therapeutic, and I think I don't think you need to have a connection with water to be able to appreciate this song, or to be able to like this song. Again, I think if the message here is anything with these two songs, it's find your place of peace, it's find your place of home, and when you do that, go to that place of peace and place of home and put on these two songs and listen to them, and you'll fall in love with them.
If you don't like them, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's good music here. It may take a couple listens, for those that have hated it for years or whatever, but I think our message, and our plea is to go back and listen to these songs because they're pretty damn good. So with that, we will wrap up our roundtables for the calendar year of 2022. We have a lot of stuff going on in 2023, and we want to see, just like Evan signed up for this one here at the end of the year, we want to see new guests. We want new people on Rush Roundtable. It's an awesome community. Every single person who has joined has said, it's been awesome to make some Rush friends, albeit virtually. But we want to encourage as many people. If you've watched we know a lot of people watch our episodes. We know a lot of people leave comments. Please, shoot us an email or leave a comment, and we'll be in touch to get you on the show. So with that, we'll see you next time on Rush Roundtable. Take care, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.